Morning. I'm gonna draw some. I've been working on my introduction game lately. I'm making a game to introduce myself to other people who may make games, which is a really neat experiment. I'm really interested in the context of artwork when it's made. Nothing necessarily too heady, but just like what the goal was when making it. For instance, these drawings are just in order to kind of like hang out with me, which is actually really similar to what the introduction game I'm making is. Only one of the cool things about it is that so I guess you can kind of think of it as two phases. I didn't realize this when I was doing the conceptual work on it, but this is how it's turning out, and it makes sense. Of course, it would be this way. The first phase is basically making an environment to walk around in, and the second phase is then adding in a bunch of comments that I'll be making about the environment. So basically I'll be walking around and having opinions on the space that myself and the player will be sharing the experience of. And so one of the things that ends up happening there is, since I'm the one creating the environment, one of the things I tend to think that I should talk about, for the sake of honesty, is, why I put a house in a particular spot or something. But this morning, as I was thinking about it, I realized that I think that would actually be a mistake, because though it is assumed that that I am representing myself, well, I guess it's because I am representing myself in the game, and that representation is necessarily an abstraction, and I think, and I'm more comfortable with the idea of allowing that abstraction to basically not acknowledge the author, who is me, though they might be aware of it, though they will be aware of it, there's not necessarily any need to acknowledge it, and I might change that decision if I come to a spot where it makes more sense to me to make a comment. But this is kind of one of the reasons I like thinking about what the goals of the piece are, and being really kind of confident in that, because when I come to a moment where I'm making a decision between, like, oh, should I comment about the fact that I made this game in this spot or not, I can think, well, what was the original goal of the game, and what are my goals now, and will it achieve those goals, or will it move us away from those goals? And that's often how I'll end up making the decision, or at least I think it is. I don't know if that's really true, but I think that's what I think happens. And I'm really excited about the project. Oh, look, as I'm talking about myself, I wrote me. It's cool. Yeah, I'm enjoying the project. The method that I'm using for it is mostly walking around areas that I typically walk around and taking photos in order to not to recreate an environment, but just more like to get high resolution images with which to make an environment that's loosely representative of zones that I experience in real life. Those zones being retail space, residential areas, and woods. That's been a really fun aspect of the project, is going into those zones, or even just walking around and realizing that I'm in a zone, and then deciding, oh, okay, there is a lot more visual detail to this than I ever remembered, because I wasn't trying to make a game about it. I'll take photos of this and put it in the game so that the representation of me can then comment on it. One thing that's kind of that I'm finding out is that, so just because when I walk up to a spot and I take a photo of it, I might have an idea of what I would say about it, but what I'm going to be trying to do is instead of depending a lot heavily on that moment of taking the photo of the real place, I'm going to be trying to walk around as essentially an asynchronous player, and commenting based off of that perspective, which is obviously going to be different. So, for instance, if I was, well, let's see, an example would be in some of the woodlands that I was in. When I was there, I was thinking about how much more beautiful, well, not more beautiful, but how different the biome of one area seemed than another, and how I hadn't remembered that path, and I wanted to know, like, where does that path go? That type of thought. But then I've taken a bunch of pictures from that area, and I'm now putting them in a Unity terrain, and now I'm going to be, instead of repeating those thoughts in text, what I'll be doing is playing the area that I've created, and asking myself to respond to it. So, for instance, if I put a bunch of, I don't know, sprites of a photo of a tree, I might comment about the cluster of them or something, even though that cluster might not have existed when in the original area that I took the photos of. I enjoy thinking about this type of thing.